Are we ready for Chief Medina?
We are. Thank you. Thank you for having me here this evening. Thanks for accommodating me. And I'll be upfront about it. My mother had an accident, so trying to shuffle my dad around from the hospital and home and trade out people staying with her. So she'll be hospitalized for a couple weeks. But just wanted to give a little bit of an update with APD. And, I do have a commitment that hit CPCs twice a year. This is the one for the spring. I've done a couple already this round, and just wanted to give some updates on, 4 main topics. We always talk about them. First being crime. That's the number one concern in the community. I'm out and about every day, and just today I was talking to a local business owner, and crime is still the forefront of on people's mind. We've made a lot of progress in a lot of areas. We've made a lot of changes to homicide, the structure. We've brought in support staff that helps them process electronic evidence. Been very successful. It's getting us to move warrants faster. And I'm happy to announce that last year at this time, we were right about 36 homicides. And currently we are right about 26, 27. We have a couple in there that we got to see which way they go, if they're, whether it's self-defense or if they are some other cause of death. A lot of times we have to wait for an OMI report to exactly determine what the cause of death was. One of the big things that we're happy about is we had been criticized previous years. Since 2017, we never got above a 60% clearance rate for a year. I'm happy to say that we were at about 107, 108% clearance rate yesterday. And between today and tomorrow, they have 2 warrants in the pipe that'll be signed. They'll clear 3 more homicides, and we're hoping that that will rise right around 120 again. We're hoping that's a big leaps and bounds for us in terms of being able to bring justices for families. All of our major crime categories are on the way down, except for robbery. Robbery is up sharply, but we have a lot of operations going on within the city. My biggest concern crime-wise is the violence that's being exhibited towards our officers. We've had 5 officer-involved shootings. Above that, a lot of those are compounded by mental illness. Still advocating for our state to really look to see how we could fund more resources for both mental illness and drug addiction. I hope our courts can start mandating it a little bit more and monitoring individuals while they're out. We have had a lot of success with the courts. I know there's a lot of controversy at times, and we've spoken up and been vocal when we don't agree. Some people like it, some don't, but the bottom line is we need to continue to improve the processes, and I want to thank the Supreme Court justices for working with us. They recently made some changes for Bernalillo County, and they're working on some further changes that will assist us in some of the concerns that we have in that system. Obviously, the next biggest issue that we're working through is our settlement agreement. We continue to work hard. Happy to announce that between the combination of EFIT and Force Investigations, they have a strong partnership, strong learning and mentoring partnership. And, that's just a bright example of when DOJ, APD, and everybody works together, how we could garnish success. They did investigate 157 of 157 use of force cases during this last monitoring period for level 2s and 3s. And that's a huge step in the right direction and exactly what we wanted to see. The draft report is out. We're not mentioning it, but there is a lot of improvement that we're going to be happy to, embrace everybody involved in the process and look to it as a success of us working together. So that'll be announced mid-May-ish timeframe, and we will continue to work hard to ensure that we continue to work towards that full compliance level. The next area that we are looking at is officer retention. We're like any other agency across this nation. We're having trouble retaining people 0 to 10 years. There's a lot of different reasons, whether it's generations, what their expectations are. We've actually had 2 individuals who are sworn officers that chose to leave to lower paying non-sworn positions just because of their fear and everything that has occurred with law enforcement over the past few years. We are recruiting well. We are keeping things going forward, and we will continue to do everything we can so that we could keep the right numbers of individuals doing sworn work. And we are hiring support staff on the civilian side, those investigators with electronic capabilities, a prime example. The last area is community engagement. We're committed to it. We're really starting up the Coffees with the Cop. In May, we're going to be moving to a new format for our newly graduating officers. We'll be having 2 Coffees with the Cops simultaneously, where half of the academy classes at each location, and it'll be a chance for the community to meet the newest members of the Albuquerque Police Department. So be on the lookout for that being advertised out through the media. We continue to work with our ambassador program. Dr. Walker, Dr. Bailey, want to thank them for their past work. We did do a recruiting event with the Black community in hopes of diversifying and adding diversity to the police department. There's a lot of other projects. We had a recent SWAT call out with the former state representative's home. There were some questions from the community, and we actually went out and we gave a demonstration, and we answered some of the questions they had. We'll continue to work on building those relationships and ensuring that we're hearing all the voices. But I don't want to take all the time just kind of talking about us and APD. The most successful thing I've learned is communication and answering and clarifying questions is very important to us. So with that, I'd like to ask if anybody has questions, and we have some time for some question and answer so we could get to them all. And once again, thank you for accommodating and helping us through this tonight.
So Kelly, would you, since you're watching the Q&A, would you ask those questions for the chief? And I'll simply say this, that if we do not have time or the right information to fully address a question, Chief, I'm more than happy to follow up with you and say, this question, they thought it was a little bit short on background or whatever, and then we can do a Zoom podcast and put it up on an FAQ on YouTube. We'll help you get the message out. So Kelly, go ahead and press on with those Q&A.
Okay, first of all, Sean says, I would like to know what is being done about the homeless camp behind the Quick Track on Central and University. They move back and forth between there and the church parking lots behind them. Large litter items and drug use is going on there. Needles are being found in the alleys and around the parking lot.
You know, I'm going to answer this from a very high level, and then a little bit later, Commander Langwitt could address that exact issue of what they're doing. But we have become very proactive as an agency. In January, we developed a new tracking sheet to track productivity from officers on a month-to-month basis. And we did speak to our officers, and we talked to them about the importance of enforcing some of these lower level misdemeanor crimes. Not everybody agrees with this concept, but I strongly agree that listening to the people of Albuquerque, homelessness obviously isn't a crime, but there are times when it crosses over into criminal activity. I firmly believe that individuals do not have the right to live on other people's property or stay there without that person's consent, and that it's the police department's job to get these people resources, number 2, communicate with them, number 3, follow policy and ensure that some kind of enforcement activity occurs and that we bring resolution to the situation. When we started this process and we spoke to our officers, we were averaging about 35 felony arrests and less than 20 misdemeanor cites a week. We're up somewhere around the area of an average of 60 to 90 misdemeanor cites. And I'm happy to say that last week, the field had 117 felony arrests. So the particulars of that exact lot, I'll defer to Commander Langwitt later. And if they haven't addressed it, I'm sure he'll put it on his list, but we'll let him get to the details of that. But we continue to push our officers to be as proactive as possible. I know that other cities such as New York have reverted back to processes recently where they are taking lower level crime seriously. The one thing I do want to mention is that we do monitor our use of force to ensure that these activities are not leading to an increase in uses of force. And I'm happy to say that use of force has remained steady over this time period, and we haven't seen that sharp increase. We will be monitoring this to ensure, but in a lot of ways, if you look at our success with crime being reduced, our officers going out there doing their job, us doing so much better in the area of compliance with our settlement agreement, there's a lot of recipes for success in there. And there's a lot of positive things that are occurring within the police department that we should be proud of. We're not perfect, but we'll continue to move in the right direction, and we'll continue to be proactive and response to the needs of the community. And I want to share the community that I clearly hear the frustrations that are occurring, and that we're taking a very balanced approach in dealing with the homeless. A lot of times we clean up individuals more than move them around, but that's simply because of, and I'll use Coronado Park as an example. We empty Coronado Park, an empty lot to the south fills up with everybody that we just moved out. And as they start to move out into the neighborhoods, it really impacts the businesses that are in these areas trying to make a living. And it really does have a negative effect on those businesses. So it's always a balanced approach of us ensuring that we do things in a way and that the actions we're taking aren't having a diverse impact on some of our local businesses that are already struggling as they're coming out of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, sir. James Montalvo says, you mentioned the Supreme Court doing something beneficial in Bernalillo County. Can you explain that?
Some of the things they did is they've worked with us to ensure that we keep processes such as Zoom options available for some of our lower level misdemeanor crimes. They've also worked to ensure that there's more status conferences so that officers show up to court and they're actually needed, that all parties are ready when the officer actually gets to court, and it's not officers get there, they're not needed, and the case is continued. They've worked in a lot of different areas. They've suspended some of their rules. They're working to get us more grand jury time so we could get more cases through the system. So the slowdown from the preliminary hearings isn't as impacted. We've recently met with them to see if we could work out a way where some people who violate GPS procedures on the pretrial release program are not immediately set up for a warrant when it's something simply as a dead battery, and that we have other alternatives. So there's a lot of things they've already done. Pretrial hearings, pretrial interviews is a big thing that they're trying to curb down on during this time frame to get cases moving through the system and stop some of the games that are played between prosecuting and defense attorneys in stringing cases out longer than necessary. So there's a lot of success there, still active conversations. The cases have moved in the direction of getting us better resolution when people are in custody and released. I think one of the biggest successes is 24-hour monitoring of GPS. That was an action and something that was directed by the Supreme Court to the Second Judicial District, in which they made sure that they had the resources necessary and a process to report it to police when somebody violated on their conditions of release. It's not perfect, but it's getting better.
Sounds good. Okay, from Amir Chappell. Chief, what portion of the clearance rate improvement this year was from cases cleared in the past few years?
I don't have those exact numbers, but about 50% rough estimate of the cases that we've cleared this year were from previous years. We've had a lot of struggles through this in making sure that we have the right resources. Unfortunately, we did have individuals move to different divisions. That causes a challenge of turning the case over to new detectives who are still getting trained and them carving out the time. But we have found a way to deal with what we call these orphaned cases. We have 60-day reviews. We have longer reviews. We have different set of eyes, peer reviews, and a lot of different things that we're doing to help get justice to some of these families. So it's about a 50-50. Half the cases this year were solved, and the other half were from previous years.
Okay. Amir Chappell asks again, is there anything on the community side that can help with the reduction in robbery offenses in particular?
Education, ensuring people don't, when they don't have to use cash resources, that they don't. We did have, unfortunately, 2 incidents of homicide where they focused on massage businesses. It's a cash business. They knew there was cash, And that, in our minds, that kind of led to some of these homicides. So anytime the community can work to ensure that people have the least amount of cash on hand is helpful. And also reporting crimes. And the last thing is, the thing the community could do is we need to draw that line in the sand. We tried to get it with the state legislature. We want to move processes forward in which, an individual who brandishes a firearm is a threat to the community. They should be held in custody. And number two, we need to charge these individuals with robbery. That's part of why the increase has occurred, because we are charging them with robbery now if they're still inside the location and brandish the firearm to get out of the location in the attempt to commit a shoplifting. So community education, being aware of your surroundings, calling APD, getting a crime prevention assessment of your location. These are all things that the community could do to help reduce robbery.
Okay. Juanita Lowe asks, stealing catalytic converters seems to be pervasive and increasing in our city. What is being done about it? I was a victim of it. Thank you.
One of the things that we've done with catalytic converters is we are working with making some changes. We just hired a regulatory type individual who is not a sworn person, who monitors the recycle centers and the information that is uploaded. Let's face it, nobody should be going to a recycle center with more than one catalytic converter. And if they are, we should be asking questions. Where are they coming from and why is this occurring? So one of the things that we want to focus on is we want to focus on the dumping off and the exchange of these for money, and taking the money out of it so that individuals have no reason to be stealing these. So we've already had a couple of successful cases with these regulatory type people that we've hired. Some are working the pawn shops for stolen property, and the others are just getting underway of working with the recycle centers. So we're hoping by midsummer that we'll have a good, strong relationship with recycle centers. We're able to work with regulations and licensing, get to the database of the recycle centers as they report individuals who are selling these type of products, and start approaching it in that fashion.
Okay. Paul Sanchez says, I think it's unfortunate that we see so many negative interactions with our police officers in social media and still heard in our media at large. How can our police departments counter so the general population has a better concept of all that they're doing on our behalf daily?
We put out a lot of information, massive amounts of information of the great work officers do daily on our social media platforms. I highlighted on my chief's Twitter. We make sure people know about it, and we try to get that word out. We recognize our officers, we value them, and we try to get all the information out possible. There's a couple of things going on here that we have to be aware of. Is there are some individuals out there that no matter how hard we work with them, they probably will never be supporters of the Albuquerque Police Department. We need to realize that, in realistic terms, there's probably about 15% of the population that will always fall into this category. But at the same time, there's 15% it's going to fall into that category that no matter what we do, no matter how bad it may be, it's not wrong in their minds. So right in the middle there, we have about 70% of the population who supports us. And we have to stop allowing the halo effect to paint a picture over the Albuquerque Police Department. The action of one person does not constitute the activities or what is occurring with the complete organization that has almost 880 officers. So I think that we need to remember that we have to fight this, and we have to ensure that the general consensus of the community is how our department is viewed, and that there are some cases where we will have to hold people accountable. We will hold them accountable, but the vast majority, a lot of the times, it's individuals that if you look through their social media history, they haven't liked the police department for a very, very long time. And it was well before the incident that they were speaking about.
Okay. From Sandra Perea, what is the current staffing status of sworn officers? And Amir Chapel adds, particularly sworn officers in the field, because there is a portion of sworn that work inside.
I don't have those exact numbers. DC Brown's on here. He could chime in on that a little bit later. But we have 880 officers. We have gone to 12-hour shifts. The shift to 12-hour shifts has started to show reduction in our response times, adding individuals in key areas is growing our telephone report unit. We are seeing a decrease of about 10% overall year to date in our calls for service. And that does include also the sharp rise in on-site activities, which is occurring because the officers are being more proactive. So 880 is our official number, but I think it's important that we also highlight that we're almost up to 50 PSAs, which our goal is to get to 100, and that we're looking every way to hire civilian support staff. We no longer have 25 officers investigating use of force. That's a great criticism. We worked closely hand in hand with the Justice Department, came up with a stipulated agreement. They have 25 individuals enforcing or investigating use of force. And of those 25, I believe about 14 are civilians that we're training up to do that. So it's not just a matter of how many officers we find, it's a matter of carving out to make sure that these officers are engaged in activity that requires what I call a badge and a gun, and that anything else where we could have support staff assist them in getting other tasks done, that we'd be willing to do that.
Okay, excellent. And Paul Sanchez says, great information we can share with our neighbors to follow APD in these social media arenas. Thank you for all you do, APD. So
yes, we do have social media sites. We have a APD Facebook. Just look it up, Albuquerque Police Department. We have a APD Twitter account, APD Twitter account for traffic. We have APD Chief account, and we have Instagram department-wide account, and we have some for recruiting. So just type in that keyword, Albuquerque Police Department, and a bunch of different options will come up.
good. Is there anyone else who has a question for the APD Chief of Police? Okay. Sir, that's all I see right now.
No, thank you guys for your time this evening. Have a good evening. And I want to thank you all for taking time to come to these meetings. It takes time out of your evenings, but that's the way that we're successful, is that we work, we communicate, we answer questions, we clear up misunderstandings, and that we have an open, transparent relationship. So I, as chief, am committed to this, and hope to see you guys in the next 6 months, so at the next CPC. Thank you and have a good evening.
Chief, I want to thank you for everything that you and your group have done. Some good major changes. I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. I
Your mom
appreciate
is
that.
better soon.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So Kelly, I'd like to follow up with one thing. As I mentioned, we've decided to make the Q&A feature a regular for the Southeast until it doesn't work anymore. But we will download all the questions and the responses, answers, and make those available so that you can go back. And if you feel like there's a follow-up question that you would like to have asked, I will be providing an online open form on Google Forms that you can just say, hey, I was at the meeting a week ago and the chief said this and I wanted to follow up with this question. You go ahead and enter your questions for the chief or for anybody on the CPC, any of the presenters, and you'll get a copy of the question that you asked. You'll get a link to go back and revise it if you want to. You'll get my contact information. If you'll say, hey, Mike, I asked a week ago and haven't seen anything, you can get in touch with me. We're trying to make this totally open so that you can go back and get as many of these questions answered and documented. So I will provide a link to some of that maybe later in the meeting.
Hey everybody, this is Deputy Chief Brown. If I might take just a second to answer that one question, the chief, for the staffing that was asked. So we currently have 516 total officers assigned to Field Services Bureau. That's out of the 880 or whatever the total number was that Chief mentioned. I have 353 actual officers, including bikes, 52 patrol sergeants, 16 on bikes, 18 impact officers, 3 impact sergeants. I've got 15 CIT sergeants, 2 CIT sergeants, 1 lieutenant, 1 commander, 24 PRT officers, 7 PRT sergeants, 3 PRT lieutenants. There's currently 14 recruits on OJT. 6 of those are coming in late. I got 17 patrol lieutenants, 6 commanders, and then myself. So that's 516. That's currently in the field right now.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else who has a question about police business at this time? APD business.